Good evening and welcome to Writers Unplugged. This is a series that will air throughout the year in support of Cleveland Reads. Writers Unplugged is a chance to hear your favorite or new to you writers in conversation as if you were eavesdropping on them in a coffee shop. Cleveland Reads is an initiative to improve literacy levels here in our community, and Mayor Bibb has challenged Clevelanders to read 1 million books and or 10 million minutes, and we're almost at 6 million minutes right now. My name is Jen Jumba. I'm a librarian here at Cleveland Public Library. One of my favorite things besides reading is talking to writers. It's an opportunity to get to know their craft, what inspires their stories, where they like to write, essentially getting to know them better and see them as human beings and not just the name on the spine of a book. And this evening, I am so lucky to be in conversation with one of my favorite writers and best-selling author, Lisa Unger. Before we get started, I wanted to mention a few housekeeping notes. To see who else is visiting, both virtually and in person, go to clevelandreads.com/unplugged. And Maxbacks Books on Coventry is our wonderful independent bookstore. They have copies of Lisa's books just waiting for you. You can visit them in person if you're local or at maxbacks.com. And then take a moment, let us know where you're watching from. If you have questions, put them in the chat and I'll be sure to ask. So here's a brief introduction to Lisa Unger. She's a New York Times and internationally best-selling author of 20 novels, including her latest, Secluded Cabin Sleep 6. Her books have been published in 33 languages and have sold millions of copies worldwide. Lisa is known as the master of suspense, deservedly so. She's been nominated and won countless awards, and I could spend the next hour listing all of them. So instead, I'm going to highlight a few. And after listening to Lisa this evening, you'll see why. She's received 2 Edgar nominations in 2019, an honor held by a select few, one being Agatha Christie. I know I can stop right there. Strand Critics Award, which is for excellence in mystery fiction, and the McCaverty Award is a literary award for mystery writers. Lisa lives in Florida with her family and amazing dog, Jack Jack. So I've been really fortunate. I've gotten to know Lisa, and I hope you all can keep a secret. She's not only my favorite writer, but also one of my favorite people. She is kind, wicked smart, and has taught me a valuable lesson of limiting my time in the shallows. And this is why Lisa has the gift of being present and making you feel seen and heard. And Ruth Ware refers to her latest book as a deliciously tense ride. So buckle up. You all are in for a fun evening. A warm welcome to Lisa Unger.
That was so nice. I'm like tearing up a little bit.
Aw, no need to tear. I want to say congratulations because this is your latest book, Secluded Cabin Sleep 6.
Yeah.
And you have good news about what's happening tomorrow with it.
Yeah, tomorrow it comes out in paperback, which don't you love a trade paperback? I mean, yes. It's like such a nice feel to it. And in the back of this edition is an excerpt of The New Couple in 5B, which is the March title. That's my next book. And also, I thought there was a book club guide in here, but I don't see it. But there's a book club guide for it on my website. So knock yourself out if you're a book club.
And I have to say that you were gracious enough to visit our book club at the beginning of the year, my aunt's book club. And so lots of great discussion.
Yeah, we did. We got real deep in that discussion. You guys were all, well, I mean, that's what happens, right? When you talk to real readers, like you just kind of you got to dig in deep.
Yeah. And like all of your books, there's just so many different layers. So for those of that people who are listening and watching and have not read it yet, knowing that it's now going to float to the top of their TBR pile, can you give a brief overview of Secluded Cabin Sleep 6?
Absolutely. So when we first opened Secluded Cabin Sleep 6, we are at a family holiday dinner. Maybe you know that kind of dinner, right? Mm-hmm. Full of love and joy and, all kinds of support and like no sniping or backfighting or nothing like that. no dysfunction at all at this family dinner.
Right.
And after the dinner comes to a close, there is, Hannah, who's my main character. She thinks that the holiday is over, but then they discover behind the tree a stack of presents, and nobody present at the dinner will take responsibility for the present. So her father hands them all out, and they each open one. And it turns out that they've all received a DNA testing kit. And everybody has a very different reaction to receiving this gift. And some people are going to throw it out. Some people are going to do it. But, it's very strange because nobody will take credit for giving the gift to the rest of the family. Anyway, fast forward 6 months. Hannah, her brother Mako, their spouses, Bruce and Liza, they're siblings. They have a tight relationship. They're both happily married. Hannah's best friend and also Mako's ex, Cricket, and a mysterious new boyfriend are all headed to, you guessed it, a secluded cabin. Secluded cabin.
Right.
Deep in the woods for some much needed R&R and a disconnect from their very busy modern lives. And, they're all hauling with them tons of baggage in the form of secrets and lies. And there's a stranger lurking just in the shadows. There's a storm brewing, and cell phone service is spotty. So, what could go wrong?
Yeah, it sounds like a typical Lisa Unger.
It's going to be fine.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So we have Andrea joining us and also Casey joining us this evening. So that is good. So hello to them. So I know you to be a very thoughtful individual and always kind of thinking. So where did the idea for this story come from?
Yeah, so there's always like a seed or a germ, and it might be something like as innocuous as it could be a news story or a line of poetry. In one case, it was even a piece of junk mail. But in this case, there were kind of two things going on for me. First, during the pandemic, my family and I traveled to places like Blue Ridge, Georgia. We live in Florida, so there's places that we could drive to. Asheville, and we would, rent these really beautiful secluded cabins. And they were gorgeous and lovely, in every way. But they were also really isolated. And, the problem with being a thriller writer in general is that you just don't really you really don't go on vacation. I have to take myself with me everywhere I go, and my brain, which is always kind of spinning out dark scenarios, we'll go anywhere, no matter how beautiful it is, and be like, I wonder how this can all go horribly wrong.
It's people see the world through rose-colored glasses, and I suppose you see them through thriller-colored.
It's good for fiction, not always great for life. So, we'd be in these really kind of isolated places, and I'd have these thoughts I wonder about that door code. Does everybody get the same door code, or is it new for everybody, who checks into this cabin? These are things that we don't think about. Once upon a time, this didn't exist. The whole Airbnb culture, we just kind of get online, find a house, go there, get a code, let ourselves in, and we just stay there. It's okay. I mean, mostly it is.
For most of us, it works out just fine.
Mostly it's fine. But then weird things started happening. There was noises in the night and strange lights going on because, there's all the motion sensors out, especially when you're in a wooded area, most places will have the motion sensors. So those kept going off. And then I was sitting outside at the outdoor fireplace, and some guy comes driving up on a gator, and he's kind of a weird looking guy with long gray hair and a baseball cap. And he's I look in on this place for the owners from time to time. And I was okay.
Yeah. It's a creepy.
That's really, that's creepy. Yeah. So so things like that, it got me thinking, let's put it that way. And then also similarly at this time, I had been pretty obsessed with the idea of DNA testing. So I had read a couple of articles about it, and it led me to a lot of research about, again, this new thing that it's not really new. I mean, it's been evolving, in the science and the technology has been evolving for like the last 15 to 20 years, but it's only now that it's actually really scarily accurate. And there are these big databases now, around the world, of, just sort of DNA information about
Right.
people and ancestry and all that stuff. So I was super fascinated by that, the way everybody's testing their DNA now. And like, similarly to something like Last Girl Ghosted, which I was very interested in online dating and the technology there. And then for Confessions on the 745, I was really interested in social media. It's not so much the science and the technology of these things that interests me, but it's the way they are rewriting how we relate to each other that interests me. And this is certainly a technology that is rewriting what we define as family.
Right.
And the chances are, if you haven't done your test your DNA, which I have not, if you haven't tested your DNA, if you do, the chances of you finding out something that is going to really surprise you is high, very high. And once you know some of that stuff, you can't unknow it.
Exactly.
So I find that very interesting, and I find it, of course, because for me, like, the other big theme that kind of threads through my work is what makes us who we are.
Right.
What informs our choices? How do we perceive and, project our identity within our family group?
Right.
And how do those secrets and lies find their way? And they do.
Right.
Usually.
I liken it to like Tim Berners-Lee, right, who created the internet, and Tim O'Reilly, who kind of coined the phrase like Web 2.0. Essentially, the more people that use it, the better things get, right? So the more people that you have testing, the more chances you have to uncover things, just like social media. The more people that are on social media, the more chances you have for things to kind of go very well. But if you're Lisa Unger, for things to go awry. So it's just that, I think it's called Metcalfe's law. Like, this is me being a dork, but the more people that use it, the better it gets.
Well, the better it gets, the more accurate it gets, I guess. Right. And the less, and the more people in your family group and people who are connected to you through genetics, the more of those people test in there, and it's just growing exponentially year by year, the less privacy you have. Because, I mean, we're all really enmeshed.
Well, yeah, I mean, we talk about like digital footprints. I know people right now are talking about carbon footprints, right? And you being in Florida, you know that probably better than anybody right now with the current weather conditions. But just the digital footprint, like, we generate on a daily basis so much data. And then it becomes who has that data and what can they do with that.
Right. And the same is true for DNA. It's even worse. I mean, because everyone's like, oh, what difference does it make? Oh, it's helpful to know this stuff. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, in a just regime, but we all know how quickly things can change.
Sharon Bishop is here, and she's saying, hi, Jen and Lisa, and she loves your books.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi,
so,
thank you so much.
Yeah. So I was thinking about, look at that on the screen.
I recognize your Hello Kitty.
I know, right? Yeah. So there's so much to unpack in this book. Like, every one of your books, you think it's just about one thing, but then as I was starting to think about it, so, I mean, you have the DNA test, right?
Yeah.
The whole vacation rental industry.
Right.
Technology, because both Mako and Bruce, work in the tech field.
That's right.
And then family, right? Like, those that we choose and those that we're born to.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah. And that is something that really fascinates me. That's another thing that kind of fascinates me about, like, this idea of family, right? Like, we think of it as being about genetics, right? But, truthfully, it's only partially about that, because we all choose the person who becomes our significant other and becomes the other parent of our child, should we choose to have children. And that's a choice that we're making. So is family about blood, or is it about action? Is it about history, or is it about something else altogether? And I think that we as a culture are in so many different ways redefining what it means to be a family. Like the sort of packaged nuclear family that we're all sold, those of us who are a certain age, that family is only one kind of family. And the other piece of that is that when you look at, this is the other piece of the genetic puzzle that really moved me, is that when you talk about these tests and what they're analyzing, they're only looking at like 0.1%, and that's even maybe a little bit of an overstatement, 0.1% of your genetic material. And the reason for that is because 99.9% of your genetic material is shared with every other human being on the planet.
I don't think I knew that.
It is the truth.
That is amazing.
It is
to
amazing.
think that there's so little, which makes me argue that, gosh, we have so much more in common than we realize.
100%, and that we're all connected in this really interesting way. And when you get these results back, and again, I didn't do my own DNA testing, but I did my research. And when you get the test results back, it'll say like, if things are what you think, like in my case, like I'd say I'm 50% Italian and 20% Irish and 20% Scotch and whatever it is, right? And then you're going to see it's going to go down and down and down and down. And then you're going to have like tiny percentages. And just the sheer amount of places that your ancestry is connected to is awe-inspiring. And it basically just becomes a lesson in where people started in, on the planet, and how they traveled around and met each other and fell in love and made babies.
And
you're still doing it. And it's like, I find that really, really, there's something very beautiful about it. There's like this, there's something about it that's like creative and energetic, and it's biology and it's geography and it's like, all of it. So that was like a big piece of it for me.
I think Casey said it best just now. She said, wow, what a small difference. But that's that small difference that we get caught up in projecting as if it's way bigger. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we get so caught up in it, and we think that our secondary differences are what define us, all the while forgetting that everybody that you're looking at and disagreeing with, or think you know something about, or you're angry about X or Y or Z, all of it is like, that person is you. It's just you on a different day.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm in conversation right now with Lisa Unger. Secluded Cabin Sleep 6 publishes in paperback tomorrow. No excuse. Easily to be packed. Right? Weighs a lot less than the.
So perfect for vacation.
It's exactly right. Poolside. Absolutely. So I was struck by several phrases throughout your book, like I normally am. Right. And one of them was Trina talking, saying, we communicate so much with so little.
Yes.
So are you somebody who is constantly assessing like body language and the nonverbal ways in which we communicate?
Yeah, I would say I'm a pretty keen observer of people. And I think that people telegraph themselves just constantly in every different way. And it's not that I'm like, you'll be talking to me and I'm like, breaking down your
taking notes,
your jewelry and your ring and your shirt. Like, I'm not, I might be doing that on some other subliminal level. We probably all are. I mean, we all are projecting these messages to each other. But I would say for me, especially, it's energy. I feel energy from people. We all do. Some of us are more attuned than
empathic.
others. Yeah. And I think that, people tell you about themselves all the time, like in a million in a million different ways, especially in this culture. And this is interesting, just like a little tiny little bit of a side note. So I went to China. This was a few years ago, and we went to China, and we would find ourselves in these gigantic crowds, right? Like, at various, places like the Forbidden Palace and the Great Wall and stuff. And we would find ourselves in these big crowds. And usually for me, like a crowd is like, it is extremely stressful for me. Like, I do not do well in that environment. I take in too much energy. I take in too many details. I'm looking, I'm observing. It's a lot, right? And when I was in China, I didn't have any of that. It didn't bother me at all to be in crowds, not even a little bit. And I came to realize after I came back, when I walked into the Chicago airport, and the Chicago airport,
like the assault on your
it was like the assault of all these cultural messages that people are projecting nonstop. I mean, it's like you're wearing your sports t-shirt, you've got your nails are done a certain way, your hair is a certain way, you're carrying X suitcase, you're inundated in our culture with advertising everywhere you look, all that stuff. And it was just like, when I was in this other culture, it was completely turned off, and I didn't have any frame of reference for whatever cultural messages they were communicating. And even energetically, it was just very different. It was a very different vibe. So it's definitely something to do with the culture, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In your book, so I'm going to hold it up again, Secluded Cabin Sleep 6.
Yeah.
You tell the story from multiple points of view.
Yeah.
Can you talk about why you do that as a writer for this particular story?
Yeah, it's interesting because every book tells itself a little bit differently. There are some books that I'm really just hearing a very intense first person present tense narrative.
Okay.
And, so like I was saying before, it kind of, whatever book starts with an idea, a germ, and then usually a lot of research. And then if it connects to something else that's going on within me, then I start to hear a voice or voices. And in whatever case, it might be one voice, like I say, one intense voice, or it might be multiple voices, which is the case for this book. So the first voice that I had for Secluded Cabin was Hannah.
Okay.
She was my first voice, and the second voice was Henry. And so and I wouldn't say that this is something that I choose. Like, I'm not the kind of writer that sits down and says, I'm going to write a book about X, and I'm going to write it from the perspective of this person. That is not how things work for me at all.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I hear the voice, and it might be third person, and it might be first person, and it might be past tense, and it might be present tense. And I couldn't change that if I wanted to. Like, I couldn't make a determination. I couldn't like go back and say, oh, I think I should have written that in first person. Like, no, that's not how the story told itself. And I don't have that control over it somehow. But of course I do, but I don't. I don't know how to explain that.
It's the only time we're allowed to talk about hearing voices.
Right. I mean, and
I can't say that.
I mean, I hear them, and even to the degree that, like, the way I write, like, I don't have an outline. I don't know what's going to happen day to day. I don't know who's going to show up. I don't know what they're going to do. I kind of don't know what the book is about, really. I definitely don't know how it's going to end.
You do not know how it's going to end.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Like, if I knew how it was going to end, I wouldn't be able to even write it, because why?
Right. Yeah. So this is for Mike. So you would refer to yourself as a pantser, that you kind of fly by the seat of your pants?
No. I would like prefer to think of myself as a gardener.
Oh, that's right. Gardener architect.
Gardener. Yeah. The seed gets planted. It starts to grow.
Gotcha.
You give it light and air, maybe do a little pruning. And after about a year, there's something there.
There's something there. And it's always amazing when you do your garden. I can say that.
Thank you. Yeah, the pantser thing is weird because it makes it sound like you just by accident wrote a book. which is
No. No.
fly by the seat of your pants. Like
Yeah.
maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't. I don't know. That's not true to the process. But like that's, and like so when I'm writing that way, I'll be writing and then you kind of run into these like spaces where you're like, okay, I don't know what's next. So you have to go for a walk or go to the gym or do the laundry or whatever. And then I wait to hear the next thing. And usually it happens when you're doing something else. It has to be something mindless though. It has to be
Something mindless where your hands are occupied so you can't like hurry up and write it down.
Right. You got to be doing something else that's like out of but not social media. God forbid.
No. None of the shallows, right?
Right. No telephone calls.
No, exactly. No, I
Only
think
laundry. You can make a cake. You could throw the ball for the dog. You could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a gift as a writer when you hear multiple points of view, and as a reader you get to read them and see them and hear them. I think it adds such a richness to the story because, it's not just, why, not just what somebody's doing, but the why they're doing. You're able to see inside like, oh, it's probably not the same set of choices I might have made, but I understand why they're doing it. And so it's sometimes really hard to not like people in your book.
Yeah, I mean, because some of them are not necessarily, you can't relate to them on some level, but you can on that deeper level because they may be doing things or thinking things that you're like, I want to punch you. Like I want to punch you in the face.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah. That's the great thing with books is that you never just get the action, somebody being punched in the face. There's normally like the dialogue that goes on in that character's head to say, this is why I'm going to punch that person.
This is who I am. Right. Like, and I think if you approach your characters with empathy and you find your love for them as a writer, then your reader can find their love for my characters as well. Sometimes I know some characters are not loved, but
they're not hated ever in your books.
Everybody has a strong opinion, so that's good.
Yeah, no. So I think it speaks to this line that comes from your book that says, people are layers of light and dark. Yeah. There are few true villains and justice is a shapeshifter. So glad I got those words out right. I always trip over shapeshifter. Yeah. Shapeshifter. So talk about that for a second. I mean, is that, how you hear your characters, that you hear the light and the dark with them? And
yeah, I mean, it's kind of like everybody is like a kaleidoscope, every person is, and it depends on what day and what conditions in which you cross their paths, the person that you see. I don't think that there are any true villains in this life. I think we can point to a lot of people, most of us, that we think are pretty bad. But those people don't think they're bad. They have all their reasons for why they are the way they are. And, those people may look at us and think that we're bad or we have wrong opinions or our actions are not moral. And they're sure that they're right, but we don't feel that way about ourselves.
Yeah. Okay? I mean, we're always right.
It's impossibly complicated humanity, and it's really easy. And I think a lot of people love to say, this is good and this is bad. This one's a villain and this one's a hero. And this one runs from danger and this one runs away from it. I think it's really, people want to create those boxes because it's easier to understand people that way. It's simpler. People defy that and life defies that. And, what might look like justice to you, might not look like justice to somebody else.
Yeah, this is interesting because it touches on kind of something that you mentioned about life choice, the actions we take. It's so much more complicated than we imagine as younger people. And so I think it speaks to that. Like as a kid, most of us are at least I was very concrete. This is good or bad.
Right.
It's black or white, up or down. But as you get older and you realize things are not so concrete, and there's
No.
nuances that make people,
Yeah, and people make choices, and they, and you look at, even you look at the, sort of the worst, most deranged criminals, and and that's not to say that people have a right to be deranged or to be criminals.
No.
But you can look into that person's past, and I guarantee you that you're going to find trauma, abuse, and mental illness, and that it's a chain that started long before that person was ever born.
Absolutely.
And I think that bears looking at. It's not to say that you forgive or that person doesn't deserve to be punished, but you have to look at the system from which something arises. What makes a person, good, and what makes a person bad. You have to look at that. You have to look at that system. Where did that person come from? And like all these, we all read all these like big thrillers, and it's like the stakes are so high, and there's a super villain, and the fate of the free world hangs in the balance and stuff. And that's all very fun, whatever. That's all very fun to watch, like Mission Impossible kind of a scenario.
Right.
But like it's not true to our experience in humanity. It's not true. Like there's no one that you can look at that there isn't a reason for why he or she is the way she is, good or bad.
No, I think you're 100% right on that.
And most criminals are not.
And so your stories all start with something that could happen to any one of us. It is a very, I'm using the term normal, that's probably not the right word, but a very common circumstance. People go and get DNA tests, and then something might be revealed, or people go to, on vacation, and then a storm hits. I mean, so, and you're in, stuck. I shouldn't say stuck. You are in the same physical space as people that you don't normally spend that much time with.
That's right.
So,
and this is all,
and it's a stressful situation, causes us to act sometimes aberrant to what we are when things are easy going.
Exactly right. When the pressure is applied, it becomes a crucible. It reveals us for who we are. When we're afraid, when we're angry, when we're, fighting to save somebody that we care about, or our child is in danger, we become very different people in those moments than we are on any other given day.
Absolutely. I think when they do like personality tests, that some of the personality tests will ask how you would act in a stressful situation, because it's not always the same as you would act, like right now we're having a great conversation. Things are fine. I think you're great. You think I'm great. But something could stress any one of us right now, and all bets are off, right?
That's right. Exactly. So. Yeah. And I think that's fair to know that. And I think it's a mark of wisdom to like know that about yourself. To know that when I am triggered, I behave in this way. When I'm afraid, I behave in this way. When I'm hurt, when my feelings are hurt, this is what I do. Yeah, and I think that kind of self examination can be very helpful.
I think emotional intelligence should be taught like in grade school, right? Because if you're self-aware, then you can self-manage, right?
100%.
And then by doing so, then that improves the relationships and the dynamics around you, personally, professionally, wherever else.
That's right. Yeah, and you talk. I've over time known a lot of. I mean, in my local area, I worked with some girls that had been removed from their homes because of situations of abuse, and I helped them to write some poetry, and we put a book together, and it was something I did for a number of years. And I thought it was such an important piece that you learn to understand yourself, to understand the abuse that you come from, and narrate your existence in such a way that it gives you control over the next chapter of your story. And emotional intelligence, and kind of drilling into, like we were saying, like what makes bad people, what makes criminals. Usually it's somebody that's been very much so injured by their family of origin, right? If you can look at that and break the chain of abuse and break the chain of what came, addiction or whatever came before, you can write yourself a better future. You can. It is possible.
Not always easy, but it is possible.
Not easy. It's not easy at all. It's not easy for any of us to choose to be who we want to be as opposed to who we think we should be or who we were told we were or who our parents are, what we came from. But you can do it. It just takes a lot of work.
Absolutely. So your characters, this is a full cast of characters in your Secluded Cabin Sleep 6, right? We have Hannah, who's married to Bruce, right? You have Mako, married to Eliza.
Yes.
You have Cricket, who is Hannah's best friend, but Mako's ex. So there's a little, exactly, along with her like new boyfriend. So Sharon's questioning about writing your novels if there are characters that keep you up at night. Did any of those intrude on your?
I mean, my characters always keep me up at night. Like again, it's kind of a side product of how I write. A lot of the stuff that if I'm working on something, I do believe that it's working out in my subconscious. And so there's a lot of 3 a.m. wake ups. There's a lot of like, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
there is a lot of that. I'm sure there's an easier way to do this. I personally haven't found it, but yeah, I mean, so they do keep me up. Like I'm not afraid of them. I'm not afraid of any of them. I understand them all very well, and they are contained on the page. So I'm not like, oh, I've created this monster and he lives in my psyche. No, he lives in my psyche, but I exercised him onto the page, right?
So I shouldn't tell you I read with the lights on when I'm reading one of your books.
It's okay if it keeps you up.
Yes.
That's my job.
Yes, exactly.
It's okay if it's keeping you up, right? But yeah, I mean, they're always kind of keeping me up. They're always kind of in there. And some characters stay and some characters don't. There are characters that stay with me and I know, and they pop up like Jones Cooper from the Hollow series. He shows up and I don't plan for him, but all of a sudden I'm like, oh, we're in the Hollows. Oh, there's Jones. Great. That's great. And there are other characters like Finley Montgomery, who's like my reluctant, psychic granddaughter of Eloise Montgomery, and the 2 of them are always like kind of floating around in my psyche. They haven't been on the page in a while, but
they're due.
They really they're out there. They're waiting. So we'll see what goes on. We'll see what goes on there. And and so some of the characters do stay with me, like Ian Payne from Crazy Love You and Press. I'm happy that Crazy Love You is going to have another life. It's going to be reissued in January. So, and there's also a graphic novel in development on that book, which I think is like maybe uniquely suited to that. But I'm super excited about, those characters kind of having another,
yay,
I guess. So, yeah.
Casey has a question for you. She said, it's interesting how you talk about the nuances and how much we are alike, especially since your titles have been translated into so many different languages. And she's wondering what the common thread is that draws people
to the books. Yeah, I think that, what draws people to the books is, I hope it's anyway, is the characters, that they're all really human and that we can see pieces of ourselves in them, even the ones that we don't like very much, or who are addicted or sad or, murderous or
yes,
whatever they are. And I think too that another thing that, draws people to the books, and it's, it is related to character, is that the women in my novels, they may have been victimized by something that has happened to them, but they are not victims. These are people on the other side of trauma trying to find their way back.
Yes.
And they all have really different ways of trying to do that. And there's some of them are healthier than others. But there are no victims in my books. No one who has taken on that identity.
Mm-mm.
That surviving trauma is is a warrior's journey.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
If somebody has done something to you, and you have walked away from it, and you're trying to rebuild your life.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is like that's a hero. That's a heroic action. And so I try to approach those characters from that place. And I think probably all of us relate to that in some way. Probably all of us relate to having walked away or fought our way from something that caused us pain, from the smallest thing to the most traumatic thing. And I think that those characters draw people to the books, because there's always that element. There's almost always that element to them.
Absolutely. And the way that they do that, the way their heroic actions are, they're not like over the top.
Right.
Exactly. There are things like, okay, I can do that. Like you can see yourself in a book or see somebody going through something that has a similar emotion to what you've experienced and see them on the other side of it.
Right.
And it gives, I think, great hope to a lot of
people. I hope so. I really hope so. Jennifer McMahon, who's a favorite writer of mine, she said something really nice about one of my books a long time ago. She said that, Lisa Unger walks you through the dark to bring you into the light. And that's how I was very moved by that, because that is how I feel about the books, that we're going to walk through the dark spaces, but we're headed in the right direction, and I always do sort of consider myself like a spelunker, like I'm shimmying into the dark spaces of the human psyche, only because I want to know what's there. I want to shine a light on it, because I think when you shine a light on your monsters, that they get smaller or they disappear, as opposed to letting them stay in some buried part of yourself where they just, rattle the cage.
Yeah.
And facing down those demons is, a critical action of many of my characters in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, it speaks to, that awareness, and once you know better, you can do better.
Yes, that's right.
So it's huge. Oh my gosh, if Jennifer McMahon said that, I would have that like stenciled all around my house. I'd have it on t-shirts, a tattoo, everything.
I do. You know what? I think maybe I should get a tattoo.
I'm supposed to get one because I hit a milestone birthday. I just haven't done it yet. So
25.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Times 2.
Been there, done that, my friend.
Yeah. So can we talk a little bit about the creepy factor in this book? And this book being Secluded Cabin Sleep 6 by Lisa Unger. Okay, so there is artwork made of human bones. There are ghost stories. There's the property where a man murdered his family and the ghost of the woman. I mean, there's so many different layers on this story. Yeah. So,
yeah. Well, I guess at the heart of it is, in that all those different like sort of elements of it is memento mori.
Yes. Remember the name of Depeche Mode's new album. I'm not kidding. I can't make this stuff up.
That's good to know. That's great. Mm-hmm. Love Depeche Mode. Love me some Depeche Mode, of course. I mean, as any child of the 80s.
That's exactly right.
But, memento mori means remember that you must die.
Correct.
And it sounds very dark, right? This might be one of those things where we're walking through the dark into the light. Mm-hmm. It sounds very dark. Most people don't want to do that death work. They don't want to acknowledge the temporary nature of their existence.
Oh, I won't tell you the book I have sitting on my table over there. It's called In Case You Get Hit by a Bus.
Oh, wait. Wow. Okay, I want that. But it's, it sounds very dark. And most people, when you want to talk about something like that, they're like, they don't want to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about that. But if you can look at that, if you look at that concept, it's actually quite joyful, right?
Yeah.
It's like, because if you remember that, then you can remember, and it sounds like a cliche, but of course it's not, that every moment is a gift.
True.
And that you can find true joy in almost every moment, no matter how difficult, no matter how painful. And it's, and you should, because, we're not promised anything in this life.
No, and I think it speaks to the temporary nature, just as the pain and the discomfort.
Right. It's right.
As palpable and as horrible as it is, it's temporary. Like it'll pass, right?
It'll pass.
But to your point, remember,
yeah.
To remember you must die is like you flip it, and it's like it's a reminder that why you must live.
Right. And exactly, like you're upset about this thing. If you were thinking about the idea that you or something going to die, how upset could you be about that thing? I mean, maybe you could be. Maybe it is a really big thing, but maybe it's not. Maybe the guy in front of you cut you off, or the barista at Starbucks like didn't give you the right
order.
Coffee. Really, you're pissed about it. You feel,
any number of things, right?
It's okay. It doesn't matter. You're going to die. Not today necessarily, but eventually.
Yeah, hopefully not today, but it's so. I went out.
Sorry, everybody. It's got too dark.
No, it's a reminder, to live and to appreciate the moments, because they're not guaranteed.
And I tend to do that with I tend to explore that, I was actually exploring that idea in the book, that was the artist's philosophy behind the bone sculptures. Right. And I remember having similar feelings like in places like the catacombs in Paris, there's a church outside of Prague that's made almost entirely of human bones. And having that, being in a space like that and seeing that and thinking, wow, every single one of these people lived a life, that seemed like the end all and be all to them every minute. Like they were the main character of whatever story it was that they were telling. And so like that stayed with me. Always.
Absolutely. So can you share with us what we talked a little bit about before, your novella, and then the sign behind you, the new couple in 5B.
Yeah. So
share a little bit about that.
Yes, I will happily talk a little bit about these things. So coming out October 24th, Christmas presents. Oh, yeah. Oh, there we go.
Perfect.
It's my Christmas novella that I wrote for, there's a very famous bookshop in New York City in Tribeca called Mysterious Bookshop. And from that shop, Otto Penzler runs his publishing company, Mysterious Press. And he asked me if I would be interested in writing a Christmas novella. And I said, I have always wanted to write a Christmas novella, because you know me, I'm always looking for the dark side. So anything that glitters, I want to know what goes on underneath. So I have been interested in Christmas. I kind of touched on it a little bit in Secluded Cabin Sleep 6, where the story opens at Christmas dinner, and it's been something that's been kicking around for me a little bit. So I like to think of this as Lisa Unger ruins Christmas. It's pretty dark. It's not like your traditional Christmas cozy by any means, but it's about a young woman, and she owns a bookshop in a small town, and she is on her way forward from a very dark past. She has survived something horrific, and she thinks that the past is dead and buried, until a very unethical true crime podcaster shows up at her store, and he has some questions that she doesn't want to answer. But of course, she's forced to look at things that she has tried to forget, and discovers that answers are closer than she thought.
Ooh.
Yeah, so there's that, and I super enjoyed
New York.
Yeah, and I super enjoyed the Christmas element, Christmas decorations, as it were.
Oh, a bit macabre, maybe.
We'll see. So anyway, so that's the Christmas presents, and then coming in March from Park Row, my wonderful publisher, The New Couple in 5B is about a young couple, Chad and Rosie. She's a true crime writer, and he is an actor. And they inherit an apartment in Murray Hill in New York City. And they move in, and it's magnificent, and the neighbors are a little bit strange. And it turns out that this building called the Windermere has some secrets and maybe some desires. And Rosie needs to uncover the truth about this building before she and her husband fall under its spell.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun. And it's very loosely inspired by Rosemary's Baby, like that vibe.
Okay, very cool.
But an all-time favorite of mine. So just some pieces in there were inspired by that. But of course, just a starting point, just a jumping off point.
Can you update us on Confessions on the 745?
I wish I could. There is a writer's strike. We're at 100 days on the writer's strike. And similarly, there is an actor strike. So
but it went to production. Yes. No. Okay. No. All right. We're just waiting with bated breath. It'll happen.
We're just waiting. We're waiting. I know that the team is amazing. But, I also will take this opportunity to say that the writer's strike and the actor strike are important. Absolutely. And what they're fighting for is meaningful, and it's important for all writers. So I'm definitely stand with the WGA and hope that, everybody can come to terms so that we can get back to creating.
Yes.
To get back to creating. I'm sure everybody wants to go back to work. Nobody wants this.
No, nobody wants to be away from that which they love doing.
Exactly.
So Writers Unplugged is part of Cleveland Reads. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about why reading, other than so people can buy your books and fall in love with your characters? Can you talk about why reading and literacy is important to you?
Oh my gosh. Reading and literacy is I think it's the foundation. I mean, of course, it's the foundation of our society. Libraries are like a safe haven in this world. They're a place where you can always go and get a book, no matter whether you can afford to buy one or not. My mom was a librarian. I spent most of my childhood sitting in a library, and I feel like stories, both my parents are avid readers, and I feel like stories, both, the stuff that my parents read to me and the things that I discovered on my own, have been just one of the greatest gifts of my life. When you open a book, you walk through a doorway, and it may bring you to a world or to a person or to a culture that you never would have experienced. It's a completely mind-broadening experience to read a book, to be a reader, and it just opens up the whole world for you. So I can't think of anything. I mean, there are a lot of many issues that we all need to focus on, but this literacy and just creating readers out of our children, I think, would just go a long way towards solving a big part of those problems.
Absolutely. Heather mentions that she definitely wants to read one of your books. She said she doesn't think she'd be able to put it down, but she's a little concerned she might have some nightmares.
I don't think they're not that scary.
They're not that scary. No, it's more the psychological understanding people's behavior. So as you said, and so Heather, we'll walk through the dark together, but Lisa will take you back to the light.
We're headed
towards not the go to the light, creepy. Go to
not
the
yet,
light.
Right? Not go to the light, creepy. Go to the light, good. Yeah.
Yes. Not like how I was at my regatta on Saturday.
Oh yeah. Do you row? Is it crew?
I do. Yeah, I'm in an 8, but the person who parked next to me opened their car door to get something out of the back seat, and I'm not kidding you when I tell you, in the back seat was a skeleton with a Pennywise head. And I was like, oh, heck no.
You're like, no, it's it's only August. They can't have that.
That's exactly right.
So why do they have that? Do we know?
She couldn't give me a straight answer.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
yeah, so I'm a little concerned.
I wouldn't be, don't go over to her house for dinner. I'm just going to say.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking no.
Right.
No, and Sharon says books are her escape. So amen.
Yes. Amen.
So as we wrap up, final 5 questions. And I
Okay.
think I know the answer to the first one, but have you ever done a DNA test or will you?
No, I
No,
won't. No.
me either. What book do you think everybody should read and why, besides all 22 of yours?
What book do I think everybody should read and why? That's a good question. I mean, there's so many answers to that. I will say, I'm going to say something kind of outside the box. I'm going to say The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt.
Yes.
There's so many books that I could have said, but as in terms of like contemporary literature, I it's a masterpiece.
It is
I
so
mean,
well done.
there's really nothing else. There's really nothing else to say about it. It's a masterpiece, and it's a book that I truly wish that I had not read yet. Like, I wish I could read it again for the first time. Yes. I like only another reader would really understand that, right? Because
Yes.
I want to go back to it, but I don't like the journey that you go on in that book is so profound that I don't know that I could start it again and go read the whole book again. But I wish that I could. I wish that it was my first time reading it. So if it's your first time reading it, then
spectacular.
Yeah.
But I also find sometimes like I can reread a book, not very often, but when I do, because I have something different going on in my life, the books, and it's for me, it's always The Secret Life of Bees.
Yes.
Monk Kid, and it resonates differently. It's the same story, so it's almost like I'm reading it again for the first time.
Yeah, and I feel that kind of way about Jane Eyre. Like I can reread that book. That's a book that I can reread, and and Wuthering Heights, and 100 Years of Solitude. Yes. Like those are books that are like different every time you read them in your life because you're somebody different. And and that's the mark of a true masterwork, I think.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to reread, and I haven't read it since college, so it's been more than a few years, is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I don't think I appreciated it when I was in school. I didn't have enough of that life experience yet. So, so Hannah's brother, Mako's not his real name. Mako is a name like a shark.
I love that about him.
I know. I mean, it just sums up everything you need to know about.
It's everything you need to know about him.
Yes.
It really is.
Do you have a nickname? No. No.
I don't.
Okay. So the other question is the package for this cabin, when they decide to rent it, comes with fully stocked refrigerator, right? Everything they could possibly want, chef. When you travel, and I know you travel frequently, what is the one thing you always have to have stocked?
What is the one thing? It's going to be such a boring answer. I have to have coffee. Okay. I have to have coffee. That's like the number one.
Otherwise, a deal breaker.
It's a deal breaker. Yeah.
Fair.
That's boring. Sorry. I should have said something like, I don't know what, like vodka from Iceland, but no, it's really. But
when I was in college, I used to book bands for the concerts on campus, and we'd go through their riders, and like they would want M&Ms, but only like the green and the yellow ones.
You're like,
you'd have to like pick up, really, just because they could, right?
I know. Yeah, exactly.
So there's unusual artwork in this cabin, the secluded cabin. Do you have a favorite piece of artwork?
Do I have a favorite piece of artwork?
Either hanging in your house or in a museum.
Oh, in my house, I have a lot of art in my house. A lot of it from local artists, things that I just kind of fall in love with in the moment. But I think as far as like paintings, probably my, like paintings that are in museums, probably my favorite painting is The Kiss by Gustav Klimt. Good. Yeah, that's probably one of my, but there's so many. There's so many things that. But that is a really amazing print. And I will just say, just kind of weirdly, on this last trip, I visited the Norman Rockwell Museum. And those paintings were so magnificent. I feel like I did not realize what an absolutely magnificent artist he was. Like those images are so overproduced, and they're so like, kind of, they're so familiar to you, right? That I did not realize what a magnificent painter he was, what a storyteller he was.
Absolutely.
And I was just kind of blown away. I was kind of blown away by that. So that was something that I recently discovered.
Oh, that's awesome. Is there anything that you want people to know that I haven't asked you?
These were hard questions, Jen. These are really
sorry.
No, okay, I can come up with something good. Here we go.
Okay.
Librarians are the only people that are as geekily into story and character and, the beauty of writing as much so as writers are.
Thank you.
Right? And my mom is a librarian, and I just think that they're a very special breed of people, and libraries are special places. And I'm just really grateful for you. I'm grateful for all your support, Jen, and the library. And I want people to know how grateful I am for libraries' experience.
Likewise. I mean, I wouldn't have a job if it weren't for writers like you, So like, it's this cool symbiotic relationship and dynamic.
Yes, it is.
It is. So I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. This has been Writers Unplugged. I'm Jen Jumbo with Cleveland Public Library. Have a good evening and happy reading.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jen.